So in the last video, we introduced the concept of the second law of demand and elasticity. And we talked really briefly about changes in your behavior in response to changes in the price of gas, and how in the short run, you probably don't alter your behavior all that much, but in the long run, you'll probably change your behavior quite a bit. Let's apply this to a much more contentious issue of the minimum wage. Okay, so when we raise the minimum wage, most economists say that it will cause an increase in unemployment, or that it will have some type of what we could call disemployment effects or something similar. But the truth behind this statement is much, much more subtle. So in the short run, so in the months immediately following the passage of an increased minimum wage, firms that employ minimum wage workers will almost certainly continue to employ the same number of workers. So in the short run, probably not much of an effect on employment. Okay? And this is because most firms set up their companies to produce their products in a very specific way. We could call it a labor to capital ratio, right? And most firms have a very specific one set up given the price of labor and the price of capital, okay? In the long run, however, so in the long run, right, when firms are actually able to make adjustments to the process by which they produce all of their products, we actually do tend to see a lot more negative employment effects. So we end up seeing firms being less likely to hire new people, less likely to promote current workers or give them raises. And we might even see firms looking to find a way to substitute machines for labor. So here we typically find substituting machines, which are a form of capital, for labor. Okay, and we actually see this quite a bit, right? We've seen touch screens take prominence at fast food restaurants, self-checkout lanes at grocery stores, even Sam's Club, or is it Costco? I think it's Sam's Club. Sam's Club is getting in on this action by making it so that their mobile app can act as a cash register. So as you're walking through the store, you can actually scan the barcodes of the products as you put them in your cart, and then you can just click pay on your cell phone, show the guardian at the door, the gatekeeper, your phone to prove that you have paid for the things in your cart, and be on your merry way. Now, this gets to an important distinction between the short run versus the long run. Okay? And unfortunately, these terms aren't really all that clear, and I can't give you a bright line rule for what it means to be short run or long run. Okay, so it's not like the difference, it's not like there's a certain number of days or months that classifies ourselves as the short run, and then anything longer than that number means long run. Okay, so the short run is basically the period of time where some aspects are what we could call fixed. Okay, the long run is a period of time where nothing is fixed, or we could say all things are variable. Okay, so in the short run, how many workers you need at a factory is pretty much a given. But in the long run, you can change to new production techniques that might require fewer workers. Now, the short run and the long run is going to vary by firm, by location, by industry, and a whole host of other factors. So all of this and more actually makes it empirically very difficult to test what the effects of minimum wage laws actually are. And because of this, most economists rely on theory instead. Okay? So anytime we draw a demand curve, we're really drawing a demand curve for a specific period of time and the responsiveness for that particular length of time. So in the short run, we might have a relatively steep demand curve, indicating that at a given point, the demand is likely to be relatively inelastic. But over a longer period of time, that demand curve might be a little bit less steep. And over an even longer period of time, that demand curve is even less steep. Okay? And so all of this, like what we're saying, and I've drawn this terribly, these should all be intersecting at the same point, but we can fix that by making the point huge. Okay? So at this point, demand curve number 1 is more inelastic than demand curve number 3. Okay? And demand curve number 3 is the most elastic demand curve at that point. Okay, so it's not necessarily about the slope, it's all about the change in the quantity for a given change in price. Okay, but the slope through a specific point, the slope with the steeper line through that point will be the more inelastic demand. Okay, and so slope is kind of relevant, but also not. Okay, so over time, demand curves tend to become more elastic. Okay, so every demand curve is really just one of a fan, if you will. So we can call these a fan of demands or demand curves. Okay, anytime we're drawing one demand curve, we're really drawing just this short-term one, not the whole host of demand curves representing the various changes in elasticity over time.